So I'm going to attempt to video the way that I do captures to do my animations, since I've had a few inquiries about how I do my animations. So I'll start off here with, I use fire capture. I've got a Lunt LS60T HA solar scope, the Skyrus 236M camera, and I use fire capture for capture. Several reasons. It has some features I like. A lot of other people use Sharp Cap. Other programs, I'll be doing this on fire capture. So I'm not sure the seeing is going to be that great today, but at least I can record some of this stuff. So I'm starting out, have the most of the disc in. It's on the maximum resolution at this point in time. I've brought down the image so that it will fit onto the screen, and there's a fairly decent prom over in this area that I'm going to focus on. So I've put on a 2x teleextender, and I'm zoomed in on that area that I'm interested in, and I can get that in the image where I want it to, and then I typically put the reticle in so that I can keep track of where this is, so when aligning then it's not quite so difficult to get everything aligned. And I want to check focus, make sure it's as sharp a focus as I can, and I'll play with the sliders up here to change my gain. I want to bring out as much of the prom, which means I'm going to blow out the disc, basically because it's such a faint prom. I've got my exposure at 9.8 milliseconds. It's a bit breezy out today too, probably can hear that. And I'm going to set up the auto run, and typically I go with anywhere from 30 to 60, going from 30 minutes to 60 minutes. I'm going to do it with 30 exposures, make the delay 60 seconds, so there's a minute in between each image, limit to 300 frames, line up where I want that first frame to start, then I'll hit auto run. And then fire capture will automatically capture the first image, 300 frames. I've got it set for 90 to 95 frames per second. It varies as to what it will capture. At that point it was 84 frames per second, 300 frames total. It will count down. In the meantime, I keep an eye on this just to keep an area of that prom centered. It is going to move because I'm not polar aligned. I'm just very roughly polar aligned to north using an Optron CEM 25P. Nice little mount for quick setup, and it's fairly steady and reliable. And this is going to count down again, and after it takes this one I'll pause the video, because you're not going to sit here and watch this go for 30 minutes. But here comes the second one, and we'll pause the video at this point in time. Okay, so while the last few AVRs are being captured, I thought I'd review over here because I'm not sure what I covered to begin with. So again, fire capture, I've got auto run set up. It's counting down every minute and then taking 300 frames at about 90 frames per second. Again, I've changed the region of interest down so that I get a higher frame rate, which is important for lucky seeing, capturing at moments of when the atmosphere is still. The seeing doesn't look too bad right now. Sun's pretty much straight overhead, so a little atmosphere to interfere. The heat can cause problems. But you can see I've got my settings. My gain is up fairly high because it's a fairly faint prom. Gamma's down a bit, so the sky behind is fairly dark. And again, just under 10 milliseconds in the capture time. One of the reasons, again, I like to use fire capture, this reticle is nice to keep the prom where I want it. You can see I've got the center of it in this kind of area and keeping the prom within this. And I'll make slight adjustments since my polar alignment's very rough. It's really just aligned pretty much to north. I've made some marks on my patio after polar alignings to where the legs go, and every time I set up I align those legs. So it's fairly close. Don't change any of the altitude or anything like that. So it stays pretty well, and I just have to make slight adjustments with the hand controller and declination every so often as it drifts a little bit. And every once in a while, some adjustments in RA because of periodic error, but minor. You can see it's tracking pretty well. So we're going to finish this up. We've got 2 additional AVIs for it to capture, and then we will move on to taking these AVIs, and I use AutoStacker for aligning and stacking of the individual frames, getting the best frames done. So I'm going to pause this recording while this finishes, since you don't need to watch it just sit here and count down. So while I'm capturing, I thought I'd show you a little bit of the rig. See the LS60 tilt tune, single stack, the Skyris 236M mono camera, and the Electron CEM 25P mount that I utilize. And while I'm videoing or capturing video, I utilize the hand controller just to keep it aligned. I'll show a little bit more on the screen here in just a second. One more to go. The other thing in fire capture, you can select the folder you want to put your AVIs into. You can give them names. If you're doing different proms or different features on the sun during a session, you can put them into different folders so the AVIs are easy to find once you go to align and stack those. So we're about done here, about 30 seconds to go for the final one. And luckily I didn't have to go through a meridian flip, and the clouds stayed away, which has been nice. And it's not a bad temperature. It's only about 70 degrees out today, so cool front went through, which I think helped with the seeing and definitely helped with the temperature. So counting down here, just about done, and in between the AVIs I've checked focus, etc. on the prom. And we're done. So after we have captured our AVIs, the next thing is to align and stack all of the AVIs, and AutoStacker has a nice feature where you can do this in batch. So I'm going to go ahead and open the files that the AVIs that we captured earlier. So here are the different AVIs. We're going to select them all, open them, and my area of interest anchor is right where I want it. And I'm going to go to the normal range for noise, be surface, and we'll do analyze. Once it's analyzed, I do 30% of the frames, so we'll do about 90 frames to stack. Use one of the smaller alignment points, and I have it automatically do this mainly because I've run into issues where it won't do every single image if I don't allow it to pick the alignment points. So once we do the alignment points, I'll hit stack. I'm not doing any sharpening because I'm going to use Registacks for the sharpening. And you'll see it's going through, and we'll do all of the analysis on it. Then it'll start stacking the image, and it's working on the second one now. So this is something that you don't need to watch, so I'm going to pause the recording now, and we'll come back once all of these have been stacked into files. You can select the file you want them to go into. If you want to put any names to it, etc., you can do that. I do not do any drizzle resampling. These are black and white, so there's no RGB align. Okay, now that we have all of our AVIs, all of the images aligned and stacked in files, now we're going to do some sharpening. I use Registacks. There are other programs you can use. AMPPG. All of them do decent jobs. I just happen to like Registacks. So we're going to go find those videos, or actually the aligned images. And as I said, they're going to be put into folders. Here are the individual images, aligned and stacked. So I'm going to open the first one, and Registacks immediately puts that and brings it into wavelets. Since this is an image that was done with a Barlow extender, I'm going to start down here at the large areas, and you'll see as soon as I move that, you start to see some definition. You'll also start to see some noise. Work my way up to the next one. But more noise. So we'll denoise this a bit. At different levels. See the noise starting to disappear. Still have some nice detail. I might play with this one just a little bit. Bring up a little bit more detail. Do a little more denoise. That looks pretty nice. I don't see that I need to use any of these sliders over here with contrast or brightness. I bring this down a little bit. That does bring the sky down a little bit, and the prom shows up a bit more. So I'll leave it at that. I'm going to leave this at hold so this doesn't change between images. And just in case, I always save the scheme. So I'm going to name this prom 822.2018, so I know it keeps the same wavelets. Save that. I'm going to save the image. I'll add a new folder. That's where my images are going to go. We'll call this prom 822.2018, and this is the first one, and save. And I just go down and I open the next one. It automatically applies everything. Save that image. Call this one number 2. And so on and so forth. And I'm not going to have you watch me do 30 individual images and save them. So I will stop the video at this point in time till I've finished all of them. So now I have my 30 images that I've applied wavelets to. I have some nice details. If seeing were better, you get finer details, but that's going to do. So now the next step is to align all of these individual frames to make the animation, and there's a number of ways to do this. You can use programs such as PIP, IMPPG. I happen to like Photoshop, and I do these manually for proms. When there's surface structures, I find that auto alignment works pretty well in any program. But for prominences, because you have a white disk and very little to work with, I don't find any of the programs do a really great job. So I find doing them manually in Photoshop is the best way for a smooth animation. So I'm going to open that up and show you how I take care of that. So I have Photoshop open now, and to bring in my individual frames, I'll go up to File, to come down to Scripts, and load files into Stack. Brings up this little box. Click Browse. Go find those images that we just applied wavelets to. And it's right here. Here are all the 30 frames. I'm going to shift click, select them all, say OK, and you'll see here you have an attempt to automatically align source images. As I said before, if you're working with surface features, typically this will work very well. Prominences, not so good. It tries to resize, do all kinds of twists and turns to get the things to align. It just doesn't do a good job, so I'm going to leave that unchecked and click OK and let it load the individual images, and it will load them as layers. And see them loading over here as layers, and about done. I'm going to click on the move icon because I'm going to move individual frames, and I want it to be fairly large so I can see the motion. So you'll see I have the uppermost layer highlighted. I'm going to go down and highlight the layer below that. Click on this eye to turn off the layer above it so I can see how the alignment is. You'll see they're pretty close. So I'm going to move the one below down a bit and over. There you see movement between. Whoa. So we have the first two frames aligned. I'll go down, highlight this one. Again, there's a little bit of movement. That's lined up good. You'll see movement in the prom. Do the next one, it goes down and up. You'll notice seeing change between. So you'll see some images are sharper than others. That just can't be helped all the time because seeing is just going to vary between your frames. And to continue to adjust these and move them until I see a good alignment. And you just go on down. You can see why I use that reticle on fire capture, so I know the frames aren't moving too much, so I don't have to adjust them a lot. But there's always movement between frames. It doesn't matter how well you guide, etc. There's going to be some movement between individual frames due to seeing and other outside circumstances. So I'm not going to have you watch every one of these, so I will stop recording and I'll finish all of these first. So now I have all 30 layers aligned. You can already see motion in this area as we unhide the different layers. So I know there's going to be some motion in the prom, some activity. You'll notice on over here you're going to see some flashing, and we're going to take care of that. We definitely don't want that in our animation. Okay, getting back to this, as we clear the layers, we can see there is motion. They look pretty well aligned. So I'm going to get them all done here and show you a couple more things I'll do with this. Okay, so I know we've got some edges showing, etc. So we want to crop this, and I think I want to rotate it. I hate to have people looking at it sideways. So first we'll rotate it, and I'll just bring it back so it's on top like that. Now we're going to crop a lot of this away because we don't need it. And I want to crop a lot of the white away because I don't like the white. We'll bring this in like this, crop it, bring it up to full size. So there's our full size. Now the next thing I'm going to want to do, the white disc I think pulls away from the prom. So I want to hide that. And there's a number of ways to do this. I'm going to do it the simplest way I know. Now I'm going to go over here and select this quick selection tool. I'm going to click in the white. And it pretty much outlines all the white I want to get rid of. I'll do a little bit of a feather on the selection. So I'll modify feather, and I'll just say 2 pixels. So there's somewhat of a soft transition. And then I'm going to fill that with my paint bucket with black. So that way the prom is very prominent and the blank white disc is masked out. And I'm going to just go to each layer, select the layer, and click the paint bucket in that area so that they're all filled in. And once I do that, I'm going to be pretty much done with this part of it. And the next thing I'm going to do is send it out to another program that I like to use to finalize the animation. You could actually finalize it here in Photoshop, but it doesn't have as many options for you for the speed of the animation, etc. So I always like to move the files out so I can put it into one other program before finishing everything. So I've almost got these all blacked out. Okay, done. We're going to remove the selection. And this will bubble a little bit, but it's still better than that bright white disc. So we've got all of our layers now. We can see there's going to be some nice motion in the proms. So now I'm going to extract these. So I'm going to go down to Export, File, Export, and Layers to Files. And I'll pick a new folder to put these into. And where our main ones are, go to Sun. I'm going to make a new folder and call it Prom Animation Files. Select that, say OK. I'm not going to name it anything because it's already got a name. And we say Run. And this is going to extract each one of those layers as an individual file. And there, we're successful. Final step is I use a program called GIF Animator. Like I said, you can do this in Photoshop, but I like GIF Animator. We're going to do File, New. We add the images. So we're going to go find those files we just made. Right here under Prom Animation Files, there they are. We'll select all of them. Say OK. Next, it's the alignment. I always do the top left corner. And this is the speed. We're going to set it at basically 1/10 of a hundredth of a second. and say finish. And we'll line them up. We hit play. There's our animation. We got some nice activity. We got a little burst here. The edge stays nice, so you don't have that bright white. Get a little noise in here, but that's just going to happen from time to time. It was fairly, seeing was not great, so you get a little bit of noise. But decent animation that now I can I put into Astrobin. I can post for later. So hopefully this was helpful to some of you as to how to put an animation of proms or any other portion of the sun into an animation.